But the Jedi was a Jedi, but the Baba, so I was a Jedi to walk on the law. Apato Chata, the Holy Chito, to lots of the Pada, Shanka the one of the Jacket, Royal Farm, but the Jacket and the Chicken, the Bajava, but you don't want to they want to see the Polo, the Java. So there was a lot of the phone was 나도 잠시 집발에 나빠 사질배 대바들 속에 조망 드니 답변지 가와 좋아마다 빨리 좀 돼서 못 돼. 따와 그런 게 나오래. 대럽이 사지 탐지에 뭐는 가야 잡혀야 되나. 이제 교실이 좀 좋아 있는 지 벌써 저로 가디는 좋아 좀 가지고 사파도 가다가 깊이 공부하는 법이더니 이마 레레더니 처음부터 아파트에 가야 정말 보통 하는 게 아니에요. 그래서 뭐좀 파체를 나라에나 가다. 처와도 마디 바르스. 그래. 딱 눈에도 마디는 약골 도가 마디 받아 살아야지. 도가 마디 받아 살아서 나버리도 드리지니 요사리.你这个抓了是吧？中年嘛这把啊，中年嘛这把。这东西不真就是这，也过来也行。东西刚要吃个没钱，在爬爬上就刚要吃个没钱，东西马真吧的，东西我都可以用嘛的，让别不管东西也可以用的。这东西这真的这我不踏不着是吧的这，那我啥就老别人，嘞，第三个这我说东西平白说。너무 작게 해야 돼. 이 놈들이 좋아하는 게 말고, 그래서 장글로 탐지를 못하는 처와마다 봐, 마영 처와마다 봐, 이런 진짜에 오래 방송되는 분이 늘 처와들이 이래, 개인 가서 이래.
Today's topic will be the topic of impermanence and especially dying. In the Milarepa teachings yesterday, the inner meaning of those teachings, the actual meaning, is really one and the same. Once one has entered the teachings of Buddhism, one begins to contemplate the difficulty of obtaining a precious human incarnation, cause and effect. All the Buddhas have formed aspirational prayers saying, may all beings take death to heart. May we always contemplate death. And also the old Kadampa Geishas have formed aspirational prayers that may all beings each and every day contemplate death and impermanence. If we do not contemplate, like we mentioned before, we do not contemplate suffering, and we think that it is a good thing not to contemplate suffering. But then we are like pigs, not thinking about anything. And without choice and independence, we will have to experience suffering later on. So we need to know the method to prevent suffering through the Buddha's teachings. And that's the reason why the Buddhas have said, may all beings take death close to heart. In many temples and practice places all over, there is some written signs where it says death or impermanence. This is a reminder for us, so we continue to think about it.
기록 남아서 저를 데려다 끼와서 좋아를 말합니다. 처음 누르죠. 답변은 다 로드지 자처리네요. 다 셔도들이 다 마셔도 탑지는 다 메인다 감다고 버틸라서 봤더니 맵동 제기거든. 때 꼬박을 했다니까. 오 마셔 사대를 봐 직장 내 찌와 숨은 저가 요리지. 오래. 제배는 꼭 니마라는 샤소리 샤나들이 소리 말아 봤다. 니마 샤소리. 속에 차고 봐. 얘네 종들이 너 서로 통과들이 반도 서로 다 얘네로 빼지는 일이 저런 깨වෙ니만 종들이 고바 강강 근처와 다 얘네로 요리는 들이 싸고 공부를 해서 사지.
Many people fear death. People who have not entered the Buddhist teachings or who may follow some other traditions do not have deep teachings on birth and death. Sometimes when people get like 70 or 80 years old and they don't, they apply all sorts of methods in order not to die. They take medicines, they take injections, they try hard to prevent death. But actually that's foolish actions because everybody eventually will have to die. Once one is born, one is bound to die. It is like the sun rising in the east. It at all times goes to the western side. It never stops. It always comes closer to the western side. In the same way, from the time we are born, we come closer to our death.
양 자세라니 이 자세라니만 강식이 말이 양 뒤라니 착하신데 신앙 들이진 좋아하고 본들 시점은 어디를 찾게 대시 망보지 잡나 이 책을 따와서 딘지도 나오는 책 따와서 어디지 어디 동카탄데 기인이 그랬나 대시 맞잡을 양지 책 종종 저기 가래 쉬요 말이 기사거든요 자세라니는 이 동시 좋아들이 샤지 오래 동생이 와.
It is important to again and again contemplate the 37 Bodhisattva practices. And this is the only practice that I'm truly familiar with. It is important to explain each of the verses. When one then later reads the root verses, the root words in the little book, then one will remember the explanation, the elaboration on their meaning, and one will really understand. If one doesn't give a commentary on its meaning, then one will not understand. So I will give an explanation on some of the verses of the 37 practices, and the first verse is verse number 4.
There 때는 사실이 좋아 마다바 레지나 갖다 참이 때는 시비죠. 참이 뛰어서는 좋아 무시 직장 요마도 징거 요마. 그때 말이와데 그때 탑 강렬들 사지 좀 사지 저기 송내 강렬들 다고 선수기 직진을 상대들이 마다 바꾼다. 근데 나중에 직진을 상대 마다 바꾼다. 어래. 근데 야르고 주기 저돌 상대 마다 바꾼다. 이제 세로 쪼고 그러면 상모 당신 대지는 대용도 상모 당나 대기 지서 뭐다 대제보다 상모 레벨은 그거래. 상모 당 나도 그렇게 나보고 길은 나보잖아. 들이 상모도 용거요래. 아래 빼나 다다 보고 탑들 로브라데 통네 다 로쪽에 놓는 들이 상모잖아. 당강 강과고도 보다고도 얘는 가이제고도 다음에 내가 제고도 당 빼샤사고도 들이 남년 집에 뭐 홀로가 이거는 들이 담보 뭐라 진동 들이 강과 진동 들이 빼샤 진동 다다 남년 집 밤이를 내가라 저한테 강을 상모던 쌍놈지 송요래 특히 참아 참대로 뭐라도 가봐도 들이 보고 보라서 뭐 특히 체도 자원들 자창도 세면 샤네 이거 그래가 제기오래 这马上不看见上路早晚的个嘛的上路早晚的用地上不要嘛的用地马上来干这个嘛来干嘛的这里打变了说没人看样子去的他妈那过天你讲过没是啊没这个地没这地在他妈东不要嘛的这他就地毛这边了大家等车嘛人把的地毛加些边了车真了搞的都车嘛真了搞的都边了这家人这车子少呀这上路当面这里有个有的那在这干别中刚刚这就这里上路当中途上上路当这里带了这里咱车不大吧是做过是吧
When we talk about death and impermanence, then many say, I know about death. Of course, everybody has to die, but one doesn't really contemplate death and impermanence. The Buddha has explained the teachings on death and impermanence, first in terms of the impermanence of the outer universe, then secondly, the impermanence of the inner sentient beings, and the impermanence of occurrences such as before seasons and so forth. Death and impermanence is something that we mentally must fabricate. It is a contemplation that we need to engage in, and then ultimately we come to a conclusion and we think, if this is the case, then this is what needs to be done. So it is something that one needs to mentally fabricate. For example, a child who just graduates from school, maybe at the age of 18, begins to mentally contemplate what needs to be done. One needs a house, one needs a car, one needs some money, one needs to find work in order to get money, and day and night one thinks about then how one can get that house and how one can get that car and that money, and one engages in efforts to achieve all that. In the same way, we need to contemplate death and impermanence. In the same way as we do it when we are concerned about the mundane concerns. If it doesn't arise in our mind, if we do not go through that thought process, then we will not acquire any qualities. One will just not do anything, one will not acquire any education, one may begin to take drugs or drink alcohol, and one will not increase one's wisdom. If one spends one's life in such a way, then this belongs to the domain of ignorance. In the same way, if one doesn't contemplate death, that also belongs under the domain of ignorance. So just as we have to contemplate the tasks that we have to perform in a mundane sense, we also need to contemplate on how death and dying functions.
Tene tere tene tata di koto ke malak kabam nani samyi na di malak kabam ko tata angrang dina na angrang dina na inji thore ke maang pala ho tere logo mi angrang dina na san chwa pada awal po chama dina na yore ore tere logo ma re no labri.
And also in Milarepa's 100,000 songs, there is one song that extensively talks about death and impermanence, and that song can be found on page number 203 in the big black book in the English translation. Rinpoche says today I will not go into great detail of that.
아랑 지구를 좋아하기를 하고 요래. 때는 선로지 지기는 상대가 다 봐. 상로다나. 너지 지기 지다를 때는 다가서 답에가 사강이 되네요. 다다다 다वर 통째 통고 요래. 니마 다와라서 사강 됐다 그래. 그니 뭐 저게 다वर 통째 지금 통고 요래. 얘네는 사지 통지가 지다를 능제를 지다는 답에가 사강 됐다니. 사야 장미 봐요. 우선 때문에 다 당을 좀 받잖아. 지금 까마다 통으로 까마다고 참 사가지. 내가 다 강한 요리들 반상강을 요리다. 중앙가에 돌아. 롱 바른 거 뜯기 요리다. 반상강을 요나. 사강대 빼놓고 무슨 사도독 직당. 사도독 직당. 사강 지불이 즉말이 사도독 주종격 이렇게 되지. 다야 아주 쪽잖아. 탈라기로 사도독 늘제가 아니지. 어쨌든 더블 사강대 대발이라 말해서 못하나. 이게 전에 사강들이 마고 반란권을 로요를 해서 못하나. 무슨 나파리 보다 치를 때는 깔마깔마로 톡 잡는 톨로도와 짜샤르 톨로도와 그래서 깔마깔마로 톡을 담는 때는 깔마깔마로 톡을 담아 톨로도와 그리 파트는 짜샤르지 지금 더블 사강들이 톨로도와 무슨 가지 털하고 올라오면 저렇게 가시는 족보 털고 해야지. 가시는 족보 털고 말해야지. 어들이 저렇게 돼서 연기 제보에 산재 가는 게 선도지 주기만 다 봐요. 하고 되고 선도지 주기 제보는 들어 되다고 이제 세무 담아다나 다다다 잡을 사관에 투과자 나자 갑자기 갑도 나도 좀 투과자 그럴 때 내가 좀 토종을 싸우던 대상으로는 세비도 초바 가리도 지금 나불는 거 다다 가리사고도 강상고도 나불는 거 석강 토야래 있으면 세비 지고 영모로 차로로 샘들 코 영모로 빼는 샘들 나불는 게 요상들아 다시 요기 가는 상부 요머리 야 나불는 거 사다도 마음으로는 토야래 되시라 제 세비들은 싸먹던 샘을 빼시 이 세와나지 때다 초바에 물어봐 득사가 대주 가리리 딱 말을 찍찍한 때도 이 세계로 와. 오 서로디 죽지는 싸우는 마다 방법고 답을 근데 딱 봐면은 따뜻한 것도 좀 가서 한바 대라도 내가 나서 봐 따뜻을 빼고 충충 뛰는 것도 저 받지 모르래 나는 라 걸도 빼 마체도 지가 다들 빼자 저 모르는 받지 모르라 나니 모닥탕을 잡은 뭐 그런 거도 라콘티고 봐. 라콘티 가르치. 알아서. 근데 즈바들이 그래. 저도 샘 즈바데 뛰는데. 솔직히 죽기는 맞다 저기 싸우고 근데 장래 샘데 지고 양도로 보라. 레이스하고 상호 죽기 니빠 통계래. 잠깐 떼게. 말했지.
So the outer universe is in the nature of impermanence. It has no substance, and also one self is non-different. When one thinks about all the universes, also this world from which we can see the moon and other planets is impermanent and will come to complete destruction. The Buddha has said there is an infinite amount of other world systems. We can see some of it at night when we look in the sky and see the stars. Amongst them are many different planets. When we take the essence of one of those planets or worlds and a piece of Earth, then they are same in nature. When one crumbles them, they just become nothingness, and they are in the nature of impermanence. They are conditioned phenomena, and all conditioned phenomena are in the nature of permanence. So when one contemplates in this way, one knows that at some point also our own world will become completely destroyed in the end. We just do not know exactly when this will happen. Some scientists say it will happen sooner, some say it will happen later. In any case, the Buddha has said the outer universe will come to complete destruction, for it is a compounded phenomena which is in the nature of impermanence. So when one contemplates in this way, thinking, all things are impermanent, are compounded phenomena, and will be destroyed, then we see our small fixations that we have to our country and the wars that we are engaging in. If we think all that will be destroyed, will be completely gone one day, what feeling will arise within one's mind? it is then as though one is awoken from a dream, the dream of ignorance. This feeling will arise within one. If one understands that everything, the whole world is in the nature of change, is not permanent, then one also understands that those things that one has a fixation to, like one's houses, one's countries and so forth, are considerably small compared to the whole universe, and still we have a strong fixation to them. For example, I myself have a strong fixation to my prayer wheel. One time we had a car accident, and I didn't even think about my own head, but I thought about may nothing happen to the prayer wheel. I could only think about the prayer wheel. So this is the little mental fixations that we have. But then we contemplate that the whole outer universe is impermanent and will come to a complete destruction at some point. This will widen or open up our mind.
다 남규지 셈지는 사람들 다 갖고 와서 그것도 산지카 그래 이제 자꾸 남규지 셈지 갈때 삼로 달라다 마시 말해봐 제가 잡을인데 다 파쇼라 참 내가 공기 또 이 어디다 다탕 짠다지 그러나 컴퓨터 탕 다탕 제 미신이 또 큰거 왔다 딱도 큰거 왔다 딱 홀로 또 큰거 왔다 맞아 대나기 반참내가 싫어 얘나 약합적으로 되나 약합과 하고 오래 자타로 미칠 반참내가 미도다 되는 파쇼를 싫어 요래 야 드릴 상호다나 이거 좀 하고 요 말이야 그래서 강식이 요래들 나가 직제와요 보고 딱 민디 지와지 다른 거 셔송도 무서워 뺀지랑 직소수 보면 50바도 하 대셔송 민디서 되게 처음에 제기로데 동네 대다로 바탕에 받아면 너무 쉬어가 되게 바탕에 봐 쉬어요 원래 데려서 오다 바탕에 봐 쉬어요 원래 대쪽부터 많이 만다면 마토 시기 넘어서 소리지 시기 님이를 잡는 거다 봐서 그러나 시기 니밤에 봐 그러는 시기다 좀 많이 봐 시기 담아라 이거라 오야매 저 자과 조금 될라서 봤으니 다들 시기 나빠만 보러라 얘는 저 시기 찡이만 많이 봐 초가 세라 되는 거지 쇼지 제비 오래 칼라마토를 셔도는 장만만 요래 되나 얘는 쇼지 하장만 보래서 시기 미를 잡고 다 받고 와서 원래 쇼지도 하장만 잘해
And then there is the impermanence of the inner sentient beings, as the Buddha has taught. In actuality, even in this world, infinite amounts of beings, countless beings, are constantly dying without interruption. It is like a lawn mowing machine. When you mow the lawn, then constantly, every instant, somebody is sort of cut off. So at any moment and continuously, somebody is dying. Even in one country, every day thousands of people are constantly dying. It is just that we don't know about it. What we know about is about those that we love, our friends, and those that we are close to, our acquaintances, and we are afraid of their death. And when we hear about their dying, then a strong feeling arises within us because we have known that person. But in actuality, beings are dying constantly in every single moment, at all times. And moreover, in this world, there are countless causes that can cause our death. Therefore, the circumstances which lead to our death are uncertain. There are countless circumstances which lead to our untimely death, such as death through fire, or water, or robbers, or other adverse conditions, starving and so forth. there are many conditions which constantly can lead to death. Also in this way contemplate impermanence.
근데 답이 지원을 쌓던데 맞다 받고 봐서 그래서 사지 종진제 따위는 다 톱의 상제에는 끝에 뒤 주법거에 쳤더니 매주도 패면 대양 저 지와시는 저와시기 요래 라마 개비신이 톱 관리되나 각들 꾸리지 제로 요래 샘들 제셔니까 하고 요나요 내가 내 천성사는 육제되고 그러는데 현로고 요래 야포다는 해야지 동아이제도 배는 그 육제되고 열 그리고 저리 야포시 바도로 송으로 야포는 누가가 야포다 그러봐 그래서 사실은 좋아지고 야들나 말그 딱 공가 말봐 그래서 그 한번 야들나 농항제 니는 류전 농항 남신 좀 벌송으로 지들 보고 한번에 농항 무슨 야야 배사 되잖아 라자 되잖아 배지도 나초라왕랑 뭐딱 벌송 되는 거라 좀 좋고요 말 류전 농항 따버리 상무들이 유리야 꽃들이 보고 그러라
Then there is the impermanence of the holy beings. Although their mind is the Buddha, their body has emanated, for example, in the realm of the humans. And also their bodies are not beyond cessation. Although they may have been great lamas, great accomplished masters, at some point they will also display impermanence and leave their bodies. Of course, realizing that the mind is beyond birth and cessation. This body composed of the four elements is just something that we have borrowed. Like it is said in the 37 practices, consciousness, the guest, will cast aside the guest house of the body. It is as though we have paid a rent for a guest house. If we had all power over it, then we would be able to keep it. But we cannot keep it. It is just like a guest house that we will have to leave.
대는 다 마보지 요래 대탐시 가시게 다 이제 앞으로 찾지는라 검사하는 샤롱들아 되니 야다 혼동 본 장바이야 야다 거기 이제 장바 제 매와야나 다 대도 없는 거 벌이 대로래 이제 거는 내 상황 당로 소소소소데 저한테 받치면 좋고 요래 세부세는 인상으로 싸우러 갔나 시그레 지나 가이 피그레 해지 별로 가다 뵙기 기적에 좀 좋아지래 강시나 야 kül게 양도 쌈나 비치아도 가래래지 비치기는 좋아 양도 기적들이지 좋아 뒤는 가이 피그레 되네 좋아 뒤는 당부 출을 보지 좋아 뒤고로 해서 아들 양이 쪽으로 제베지야 저아치는 제기 오래지 타마 사제 도벌지야 저아치는 제기 오래 타마 유미도 람송 유미도 와서 산지를 와 내가 계속 보지 저아치는 오고 오래서 드리사고 땅나 저아치는도 같은 쳐보래샤 드리 제리 상로도 저아치 개고도 디스는 되네 좋게 야라니까 담존이 가와인지 이제 지 올해 야라도 내나 담존이 가와 돌아 제비니 니 코코 돌아래 때가 하월하고 그래 뭔가 많이 알고 가라 인지 단 좋아데 니 직발이 말이나 좋아 충충을 내려고 좋아데 니 직발이 갑자기 새끼 장미 받았던 저거 요래 셔를 내기 지선 나그 요래 다 세는 유모감에 생기 กิ๊땅 요 말이 유모감에 요래 정도 상황 매번 저게 용고 요리 유모감에 빼 하트를 가버리 상태 양양도 좋아하면 다 받기는 이 사족 생기 건 오래 빠들이 잠도래 뭐 몰라고 들이 제거래 이거 딱 받대 좋게 단전이 거하다 뭐라 좋아하면 다 받대 인도한테 피고서
Some people may have read some about the preliminary practices in the jewel ornament of liberation, or the words of my perfect teacher, or other scriptures about the preliminary practices. And if not, you can also consult the 100,000 songs of Milarepa. We need to cultivate this thought of death and impermanence again and again, so that that fear arises of this thought of dying. What is the benefit of doing that? One time a disciple asked a Kadampa Geshe if of all those Dharma practices, one were to be practiced, which one would be the most important one? And he replied, this most important one that you should always remember is the contemplation on death. In the beginning, depending on the contemplation of death, we enter the Dharma teachings. Then in the middle, depending on the contemplation of death, we engage in practice with great diligence. And in the end, depending on the cultivation of contemplation of death, we establish the causes for attaining Buddhahood. So therefore, the beginning, the middle, and the end all have arisen due to the contemplation of death. Therefore, when one contemplates in such a way, one would think this contemplation of death is truly precious. One needs to contemplate that again and again. When you get up in the morning, you necessarily must think about the difficulty of obtaining this precious human incarnation with all its freedoms and endowments. Especially if you don't want to get up, you could think, I shouldn't waste this opportunity. When I'm sleeping, I am just wasting more time. It is better to get up early in the morning, since I have obtained that precious human incarnation. And in the evening, since sleep and death are the same, you necessarily should contemplate death and impermanence, and think that in this moment, an infinite amount of sentient beings throughout the three spheres are dying in any moment. And once they have died, they follow along the karmas that they have accumulated. All sentient beings are afflicted by negative emotions. And once one has negative emotions, one lacks independence and thus has to experience suffering. And it is indeed very difficult to free oneself of these afflictive emotions. That should arouse bodhicitta in one's mind. Then recite a refuge prayer and a dedication prayer each and every day. So each and every day you must remind yourself of the precious human incarnation in the morning and death and impermanence in the evening.
대단히 좀 타고 매력 가는 애들이 파츠 저때 랩고 요리 저때 파트 연구 요리 때나 아래 대답이 말하래 좀 버렸네 마고 쏘고 내가 때나 니까지 가르쳐 이거죠 소소 쫙쫙 보자 뭐라 일 맞잖아 당한 저때 하면 랩송 당한 저때를 해도 내가 답지 매도를 막 개월이 올해 대단한 때들이 처음부터 양강이 아주 긴 거랬지.
Also the causes which will cause our death are uncertain. Some die early in the wombs of their mothers. Some die just as they are born. Some die just after they are born. It is uncertain when we are going to die. If such things happen, then it is due to the karma that we have accumulated in previous lifetimes. If in previous lifetimes we have killed and abused others, then in this lifetime we will experience more frequent illness, shorter lifespan, inharmonious relationships with companions. All the suffering arises from these actions. If one has not engaged in those actions, one will experience fewer illness and longer lifespan. For example, if one has not engaged in the action of sexual misconduct in previous lifetimes, one will have a good body, physical condition. One's lifespan will be longer, maybe 70, 80 years, some even get to 100 years. These are all results of positive actions accumulated in previous lifetimes. For example, talking about lifespan, in Tibet, if one gets to 50 years, one already is considered to be aged. Here, the physical conditions are a little bit better, and then maybe as one gets 60, 70, one begins to age. But basically, when the body begins not to function very well, for example, in my own case, when I reached the age of like 50, I had great physical difficulty with my knees and so forth. When those signs happen, then we can take that to be a sign of death. Milarepa has taught about that extensively in his songs. When we find white hair and wrinkles on our skin, we can take them all to be signs of our own death, like a flower withering away. We should remember death and impermanence again and again.
다다 로 요보 답지는 나 용보에서 내요 말이 올해 라로 총사 마고 쳐요 대삼이죠 다다 쇼하는 말로 총이지 대는 마셔가지고 너무 고도 나 가지시 하고 말이지 싸우다가 될지네 아기 잡고 셋지 싸우고 레지드에는 정체 올해 개바 답지는 다 무슨 나 저때 차례지 니마 religion 되는 말 원래 리자 good road 니마 religion 관계 거리 스피드 배봐요 말이에요 셀 동의 본데 마 저게 저게 뭐 하고는 딱 좋아라 너의 매로 탑 저거 가리는 저게 좀 시계를 거기 동의 다시 한번 더 빼고 당원 저 가족들 그래도 깨작이 올라 올해가 쉬어보고 이제들이 마음이 가날 그지 이렇게 깨작이 올라 니보요 말 샤렌저랑 내가 탑대로 같이 사먹고 가지고 그래서 사실 탑대로 두지 보고 쏘는 샤렌저랑 내가 탑 가이고 있는 땅에 다리에 라래 정말 싸와 가르치는 거죠 달래도 마음고 쏘고 이렇게 정상 집안에 너무 관해요 너무 관해 강이 좀 나들이 좀 나들이 이걸 가리피거든 나 이피를 놓고 너보다지 이피 세면 좀 땅이 이피 가리사 못한 거 있잖아 어따짱 아마 요에 나도 아마 줄 피다 소리지 아마 피다도 강에 잡고 죽겠는데 요에 다다 진짜면도 대티고래 조티는 초를 패고 오 아마지 강에 가지 잡는 초라는 더 보고 강에 가지 잡는 강에 가리도 아메 제 너희 쳐갖고 잡으랬더니 아 오늘이 아마지가 가지 잡이 우리 있어들이 다다 아마지 가와요와 아마지 동에 가루요 다들 아마는 가르치고 그랬습니다. 오, 다 말로 지내도 소왔다 버리지. 아마지는 말로 지내도 다 제가 대주 제거요. 그래서 되게 톡고래. 제가 미 바로 제가 제톡고요. 다 사실 쇼가로 나중에 제가 고요. 그래. 내가 때는 저도 제라고요. 주품 기계적이 또 나와 상속성은 좀 사지 정지들 같은 말. 들이 싸우고 쇼한테 성을 봐도나 단지에 봐 제가 봐. 다 뒤탑지 거래지.
Many young people think I am young and maybe don't have to die soon, but still that is also not certain. Many young people die, and you can think some actually die that are much younger than myself. Then one would contemplate. I don't know when the time has come when I will have to die. So then one should set out and contemplate refuge, bodhicitta, contemplate the workings of karma, cause and effect. Then the older people could actually think at all times, my time of dying has already arrived. At each time I could die. Many people suffer of the thought of death. They think, oh, I am suffering so much, I will have to die. They cry out when they have to go to hospital. But that has no essence. There is no benefit in doing that. One needs to seek a method that liberates from that suffering. And what is the method that liberates from that suffering? The fear of death. What is the root of fear? This is elaborated in the teachings of karma, cause and effect. The root lies in our afflictive emotions and originally springs from our self-fixation. And what is the antidote against that self-fixation? It is giving rise to the altruistic mind. Thus it is said, the perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So when one asks you, do you have a mother? Then the other person will say, oh yes I do. So has your mother benefited you? One doesn't really remember, but then one thinks about the hardships that oneself is engaging in for one's children, and then one thinks, oh, my mother has cared for me just in this way, and my mother has engaged in so many difficulties and hardships. It is really true. What can I do to benefit my mother? What can I do to alleviate her suffering? Then one could practice Chenrezig and recite Chenrezig's mantra. Then when one thinks in such a way, love has arisen within one's mind. And then when one dies, it is this love that one will take with one instead of self-clinging. This is something that I always say. The root of the 84,000 aggregates of Dharma teachings lies in the altruistic mind, which is the method to dispel our self-clinging.
그리 되는데 다 무슨 좋아 무슨 레퍼감이니 그러나 저때 다다 저도 내중들이 야고 공 상신지 공 라이 제르라서 다 탑마모 상태 어레 진나니 다다라 니 가다와 사성티 어레 챈들에서 막는 바나 그때들이 챈들에서 막는 바나 그러면 자꾸 들어서 룸을 잡서 맞추나 사이에 보면 차서 내가 갖다 놓고 하실라 이요리 그리다가 무슨 되게 작지나 독지 세번 내로 양이 제재됐더니 다 사인 처와 필요 받고 너무 사적점 남아 이리 줘 이거래 즉 제와 상등기 줘 이 빠졌더니 다 세고 내려고 사고 줬고 이렇게나 아네 그 뒤에가 다 배쪽에 강력지네 고속 상승기를 떼네 어레 유모가 세당 차도 들어 저거 상태 뒤식이 좀 제가 제일 좀 근데 내가 도다고 들이 빼라고 생각 대로 나한테 내로 그러는 유모가 나빠서 속도 됐다 무엇이 봐 무엇이 좀 대답지 원래 모시를 돌아봐 대답으로 망치고 드리게 탑을 드리다 되네. 이 진도가 그걸 탑때 보다를 제더니 내가 민지고래.
And so as a preparation for a time when death then really comes, we should habituate ourselves to the contemplations on karma, cause and effect, and bodhicitta, or other methods such as the visualization of the deity in the generation stage practice, or like we said yesterday, the torch that leads us through the next lifetime is the realization of the clear light luminosity of our mind. Through practices such as Mahamudra or Dzogchen, by which we realize the nature of our mind. Then, when the time of death actually has come, it is the twofold bodhicitta that will protect us. First, it is the conventional bodhicitta of love and compassion which will protect us, and secondly, it is the realization of mind's nature. It is clear light luminosity that will protect us. Therefore, at this point, we need to apply great effort in our practice. First, depending on conventional bodhicitta, which is love and compassion, we defeat afflictive emotions such as anger or jealousy. And secondly, through maintaining mindful awareness, we increase our awareness and we recognize concepts and afflictive emotions upon arising with mindful awareness, and in this way we increase our awareness. We will be able to liberate those concepts and afflictive emotions arising and will not be bound by them. So at this point we need to apply many methods, and we ultimately also need to encourage others to engage in life practice.
대두를 가고 초학을 가고 사반 수제대 다다는 소리 호와를 가고 제베 도다 인시 자세라는 소원이 여행도 본잡히 도제라서 어째와 지고 요나야 제와 당디당 제베 제와는 왜 근데 그거 해변라 어래 뭐가 매번 제와는 요거 강의는 사지 동진들라 부모를 지지지시고 도지 변라 부모를 지지지시고 도 부모들을 뭐지 지나와나도 다들 부모 요원은 맞아 있어라 이 부모를 지지 되게 그랬더니 강수가래 되라 사질 깔아대나 이제 간들들이 집을 또 그다음에 시 다들이 저 안만 토어지 뒤에서 강대가 쫓아오면서 사실 시험감이 여기 딱 좋아서 마도서 예수가 쫓아오면서 그들이 사실 돌이라 하시는 데라 사실 가짜요 해라 빼대다 다다는 속에 원래 몇번에 पछि 와들 강아 지와요 봐지 대다वर 만나 과도냐고 세비도 파마마데 깨껴매 자치 지와 치고 강아 지와요 지와 깜이잖아 이 hin기랑 친 바지 해요 말이 hin기 쳐보지 뭐밥에 배신지대 hin기 땀아 차대요 대 많이 받다는 저기 감다는 차대오나 저기 감다는 랑이지 hin기랑 친 바지 다도 좀 제가 니지대라 저거 차대나 들이 세대 대는 결대리지 되게 좋고요 말이 랑양 콜로스오나 지와요 정말 자세라는 소 호종 호에 랑랑 또 덮고 말이 파마디 시 당시에 되게 막 가져 들게 되나 그 마지를 보지고는 셔리가 보게 되잖아 또 세대 보더니 또 강노노를 피쪽쪽 말와 보지요나 저들이 셔도를 보게 되거라 다 나시를 보더라 안으로 상거라 담을 빠나 대지 세대 보게 되더라 세대 보게 차시들 이거 보고들은 누구래마도 강력 표현 말이 저 타바토비고 요 말과 샘트가라 보리시 자차를 봐. 대 많이 바꿔래. 다들 몇번 매번 생기게 돼. 참말 생기 갑자기 팽고 우선 몇번 매번 생기게 되나? 지금이들이 라라 따와지서 때문에 계담들 라지서 어래. 그리 때문에 어래 생기 답지 삼바다 문제라서 봐. 나를 탑이 뒤쪽에 요래. 예를 들더니 마차바 마지바다리 공이 저세라는 것은 뭐 아무 차지매봐 체지 타초봐 나 가시 싫어 나 가시 싫어 파마 자기 열지 잠깐 너데라서 뭐 강야 주임고 단지는 속에 특치구지 뭐래 이런 조건 잡기 이뭐매 매번 저번 너데라 이뭐매 제마서 나 리드가 가는 이뭐매 서로 따라서 세타지 지금이 대마 셔버들 반도 단체버 때도 보여요 뭐래 저때 무슨 나빠 가라 근데 당고 위주 사이가 철탄서 디감이더니 루제 사이카도 철탄서 근데 스타일을 고추 매봐 쇼 매봐 야랑부터 당도 뭐봐 문화를 봐가 손에 사야지 또 당간 또 phân 도를 나눠서 이성으로 와 다대장 나한테는 더 하고 와 내가 하고 와 세당 타는 작도 필요고 와 리즈 사이칸 다다니 철탄 보라 학송아 대체대래 대체대래샤 지금부터 이게 관은 차로면 이제 자세라는 이제 생각도 하면 자신이라고 가장 맞춰거든.
So at the time when we will have to die, we need to have cultivated love and compassion. There is no samsaric friends or families which can provide us with any protection. In fact, if our love is defiled by self-clinging, it will only cause harm and no benefit. The love that we need to cultivate is the love free from the referential point. In the sutra requested by the jewel-bedecked disciple of the Buddha has said that all the worldly companions, friends and relatives, and even powerful worldly gods cannot provide you protection when you die. It is only these three jewels which will provide you with protection. It is therefore the non-referential love that we need to cultivate. That is that first we take the love that we feel for somebody, and then we expand this love until it reaches all sentient beings through contemplating that all sentient beings, vast like the sky, have been my parents in one or the other lifetime. In this way one expands one's love, and then great compassion arises. This great non-referential, non-concept-bound compassion arises, then this is pure compassion. On the other hand, in an ordinary sense, if we feel compassion for our friends and relatives, then this is compassion defiled by self-fixation, and this type of compassion will not protect our mind. As it is said in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, all those worldly gods and relatives cannot provide us any protection. For example, in an ordinary sense, when one has a child and this child were to die, then one would only think about one's own child and think one would have lost one's child. One has a strong attachment to the child, and this in fact is not beneficial but very harmful for the child, because there is no aspiration to gain liberation. Non-conceptual or boundless compassion means to want to benefit all sentient beings. Ideally, one would recall those sentient beings from within the state of the view. Or if one cannot do that, then one can remember the hidden deity. Or one can contemplate love and compassion directed towards all sentient beings. And therefore in the 37 Bodhisattva practices it says, long associated companions will part from each other, wealth and possessions obtained with effort will be left behind. In the end, when we have to die, then our parents, all our possessions, our money that we have acquired will not seek any protection. They have no essence whatsoever. When the time of dying has come, then we will have to go. In the beginning, the earth element dissolves into the water element. Then one's body cannot move anymore. One cannot sit up. One cannot get up easily. Like Milarepa has said, when you first you sit down like a sack that has been cut through. Secondly, then the way, and to give two examples, the way is you get up is like you say, like I'm pulling on a stake. Rinpoche says I am the best example for that. If you look at me, already the earth element is beginning to dissolve into the water element. Those are all signs of death. Therefore, take the 37 practices to heart and don't cultivate a strong craving for long associated companions.
Jadi cuma mela terpeta, saya kan kalau cuma mela terpeta lah, dah tu dah gagi tapi, macam tu apa cepat, nampak cuma tu kah, ni bahasa orang kamu cak, nak kamu cak cuma mela terpeta, jadi juga oleh, cuma mela terpeta lah, sedar lu juga macam kaca lah semua, kamu so, kah kamu cak, cak kamu cak jadi le. 아직도 좀 올렸어요. 근데 매일弄了这边，매일弄这边，这里打我那统统查过来，我跟他讲，那我说不什么要我记家过吧，但现在牛也是弄，매일弄了这边过来，这里弄哪里去把它成，弄哪里去把它没晓得我这边了，好嘞。这里到刚把老把特别这个多多，好嘞，多多，这里当中我们把这特别查这里，这里，当然呢，这里南了南往专门来查下来，这个呢这里，南个南往，特别高了，这里东，橄榄山，南往橄榄山去有嘞，好嘞，东啊，就话里头这里，怕里头不提嘞，得麻嘞。这马里头不拉大的牙嘞，这个橄榄马兰米产的，这个呢，这里橄榄产的写上个包花，他们讲噶，马兰产的都差个包花噶，这个反正这里这把没把握，他你讲的匆匆查个有嘞，他我们讲你讲的这啥嘛，你讲的哈高有嘞，你讲的这匆匆的查个有嘞，我橄榄的查，还写个都好多，他们没有搞这个。kalau nganggung itu nawa sada ushar ko do ko che ko malam ni ta ke ta ti galam cha ke ole malam cha ko cha to ba ga ni ole ni de gi ni ta na ta so che ma me wa ni to ko cha no ole ole de ro to ta ni ge ga ni ta mo pa ni ma so malam ni ko lo la malam ko ji so galam ji so malam ji ni na lam cha ni ini cuma membaca, ni malam cek orang dia datang musuh itu ni, sani jadi dia rapat cakap orang, datang cung cakap orang. Naruh tu pun tak ada, tapi malam jam tu, tak ada jam dia orang datang ni. Baca wali jangan begitu orang.
So first the earth element dissolves into the water element. Then the water element dissolves into the fire element. When that happens, then our bodily fluids begin to dry out, such as our saliva and our nose, our eyes. Everything becomes dried out. This is the next sign of death. Then after that, the fire element dissolves into the wind element. A sign of that happening is that one's breath will become shorter, like many Tibetan people in Tibet experience. That is a sign of being very close to death. When the wind element dissolves into the consciousness, then we really die. Then our legs and hands become stiff, and we lose all our radiance. Then the inner dissolution begins. The inner appearances of death begin. The white appearance, the red and the black appearance. The white appearance is when the semen of our father is descending down. The red appearance is when the blood drop of our mother is descending up. When we have the white appearance, then the concepts of anger come to a cessation. During the red appearance, the concepts of attachment come to a cessation. And after that, as we move into the black appearance, we fall unconscious. It is just like the sleep state. When one is an experienced practitioner, one understands this process of dissolution. Also, when we fall asleep, we first experience the white experience or appearance. That is when the clear light luminosity of the mind appears to us. Then the red appearance, when all the concepts of attachment cease, and then we come to the black appearance, which would be similar to falling asleep, and then the dream state comes to a cessation. So first, as we fall asleep, we have the white appearance, then we have the red appearance, and then we come to the black appearance, the dream comes to an end, and we fall into an unconscious state. If one practices, for example, when we practice the 6 yogas of Naropa in the dream yoga, it is exactly that we are training in this recognition of the dissolution stage. Now we can practice in small, like with small examples. Later, when we die, it is a very gross dissolution. If one trains in such a way, then there will be no fear of death.
네 다다 왜나 그렇다니 네 말람 장도 말람 가르치 그러더라. 다다니 그거 공부 지시대 개비시락 되게 나도다 니뭐 출발이나 하고는 네 바에 왔다나 저는 말람 그거 지시대라 되게 말람 그 출발 개상 잡지 말람 내 방법이요. 말람 거는 뭐시나 산이 빠도는 뭐시요. 빠도는 뭐시나 원래 이 다다 레벨 박차를 위해 식 사활에 다다 박차를 무지직 동에도 놓는 다 산이 빠도는 된 옷이나 그냥 옷이만 다 되더니 나상진이 선 다바 잡고 이러래 원래 이제 반응이 다다 나올 필요가 말랑 다보 말랑이죠. 이 빠도 줄이라 원래
So one of the practices of the 6 yogas of Naropa is the dream yoga practice, where one trains in the following way. One first maintains mindful awareness throughout one's day. One recognizes and one is aware of all the concepts, afflictive emotions and delusions, confusions arising throughout the day. And through this recognition, they will be rendered powerless. Then one maintains this mindful awareness as one goes over to the dream state. Then one attains the ability to apprehend the dream state. If one is able to apprehend the dream state, then later on, after one has died, one will be able to recognize this state also in the Bardo after one has died. That is then the state where all our old karmas and propensities will be activated, although our body has come to a cessation and we experience the same types of suffering impelled by afflictive emotions. But if in the Bardo state one recognizes those appearances, then immediately one will find liberation. Then it is like waking up from a dream. So in the 6 yogas of Naropa, one trains in the dream yoga, one also trains in the Bardo, and one another practice is the practice of the illusory body.
Tili tata kalam malam nalam desem kami syaitan topa sujud sokson kalam nika docha topa jike sheni malam nika tamok topa deje nalam chana ta treba mera kami tili ga ro yore ga suna te ga suna kami tata ni topu yo sarati ni topu yo sarati treba mera kami tata jeji de lep topu yore jeji chokshi bola 제 랩터는 되게 바도 내에서 원래 제밥이가 차 듣고 요만해. 제 람상 되니 다다 사자적으로 또 빠지면 따와버리 지 왕이 제밥이가 차 받아. 듣고서 듣지 봐야. 되니 바도 담보 죽을 상계로 그래. 거기다 가야 다다랑 즉 상계나 발포들이 말해야 돼. 바도 담보를 가지요. 워낙 바도 담보를 상계에서 바도 담보 죽을 상계. 저리 요살라 마오빠 탐기 또나 탐비 지바 메바 차로 따뜻한 이 독발이 전이 세대 이 라방 세도 고머리들이 강바욕 락바욕들이 락방벌들이 매는 이 세부터 양자판이 곡들이 저기 올려 양이 저기들이 딱 세트를 라방 세대에서 세대를 올려 라방 세요 올려 그니 지라보다 양의 양들이 이 도고 자동을 잡히더니 또 잡히 야만 세판이 요래 양이 요리면은 뭐 참아지 딱딱 되니 양이 요금만 담채나 다리 양나들이 또 담채 파서는 다음에는 돌아지 말라 때문에 양이 때 강바요 라바요 또 막 타가 요래 봐 무슨 우리만 예습하면 롱도 거서 니도 더 보러 가 보통 더 니도 더 이제 당연없어.
예.
오죽도 돼. 니도 더 몰라. 이거 바라지 거든. 탕 역시만 먹었다. 니 이렇게 밤에는 그리 오르라. 제발로 매야 돼. 진짜다. 제발요나 따지도 바로 다 보는 상계를 그래. 제발에는 따지니 말 바로 와. 다시 차례. 다 쉬어야 돼. 다 못해. 시제들이 다 쉬어야 돼. 나타서 손다.
So there are the three appearances, the white, red, and black appearances. In the first one, the 33 concepts of anger come to a cessation. In the second one, the 42 concepts of attachment come to a cessation. And in the third, the 7 concepts of ignorance come to a cessation. Then one falls unconscious and all concepts have come to a complete cessation. That is the time where one then can recognize the clear light of deep sleep. When one has trained in this practice, one will not fall unconscious, but conscious, mindful awareness will be maintained during that time. Then also, as one is dying and goes on to the Bardo state, one will not fall unconscious, but maintain a mindful awareness. Then immediately one would place oneself inside the view of Mahamudra or Dzogchen without losing mindful awareness. Then it is possible to attain enlightenment in the first Bardo, gaining enlightenment into the Dharmakaya. It is not as though one says, I will attain enlightenment in this life and then I will fly up in the sky. One can then gain enlightenment through one's practice in the process of dying, as one realizes clear light, the nature of one's mind, and thus gains enlightenment in the Dharmakaya. If one has not meditated and has not habituated this state, then one will just fall unconscious, like falling into a deep sleep. For example, ordinarily, when we have fallen into this unconscious state and then we wake up, then very slowly we stretch our legs and we stretch our legs, and then we think maybe I sleep another round, then we sleep again. But a practitioner would wake up in that instant, the mind would be very sharp and very clear and would get up immediately. So that is the difference. And also during the time that one is sleeping, if one is not a practitioner, then one would toss back and forward and move like all the sheets and everything back and forward. But if one is maintaining mindful awareness, one would not do such. Rinpoche then just remembered when he was a young child, he said, due to lack of mindfulness, I was tossing back and forward in my bed, and then in the end I fell down on the ground. This shows that there was no mindfulness. So if one in any case maintains mindful awareness, then one can gain enlightenment into the first Bardo in the Dharmakaya. And if not, then one is under this way of ignorance and one has died. Of course, apart from some very high practitioners, it is very difficult to apprehend and recognize the clear light luminosity of the deep sleep. But there is a special instruction. If you practice the Om Ahom Vajra recitation as you go to sleep, you will have to some extent the ability maybe to apprehend the dream state. Then, although you fall into a deep sleep state, immediately as you wake up, clarify your mind and immediately become like sharpen your mind and get up immediately with a clear mind. Then one can attain enlightenment in the Dharmakaya after one's death. This instruction was given by Temple Munso Rinpoche, and this is something that is easy to accomplish. So before you go to sleep, don't wear too thick of clothes, don't eat too much food, and as you are falling asleep and then waking up, immediately recognize and immediately regain mindful awareness. Anyone who applies great effort in that can accomplish this. If this is accomplished, then there is no need to go into the Bardo state. One may attain enlightenment in the Dharmakaya. So immediately get up and regain mental clarity. Some other people have a very difficult time getting up in the morning, and they just cannot immediately gain this clarity of mind. But it is of great benefit if we can train in this practice of, as we are awakening, immediately to gain this clarity of mind. That is because the nature of our mind is endowed with Buddha nature. And if we are free from all fixation, then that itself is the Buddha. Due to the qualities of this Buddha nature, we can bring to a complete cessation our afflictive emotions. Through recognizing them upon arising, we can liberate them. This is the unmistaken speech of the Buddha.
Bardo, Ambo, Shukover, Posa, they from a good jail already. Tell it is a top. Cohon is a compote, Tababat, compote, ni topu as our sinner, and a part of Taponi, Tatome, but lots of Fiore, and a classic. In top of some magazine and the pipe money on the over the bottom, Father Matlas bar. Chamber top chair, that's enough. The top some of the change of European Rabna, just the same with yellow Trinity. Jinshi gang yi satta lamtang jinshi de nampo yin de parma ku atin so ko yori ni pa la de ni dam de sa tin so la yang de ko yori this the mother lama da sabada finji la so pa o de la so pa de to pa tin so la de ko yori pa de tata car Sabata Hindioma Bobona, seeing at the donating to Simkina, Sabata Hindis, Simki, Sofia, Nepa, Della Sopata, or they have to paint over some Hindi, Sabata Hindi gave Malamina. Taya 50 days on the Laman Passon of
شوية تيسون هي حقصم هنا يعني شيء تيسون إذا حقصم هنا يعني ميشان شيء هنقول توجه تبع أمامهم مسلم سون سلسون نكرم كرر حقوق من دوس تلاقي ستاشي جرنا
لا تسمع
فرونتي سمعنا
دوري دي فما نا روماني با تماشي ده دوري دي با جيبا ده تا 我说上海个忘学呢，你上海个当车了，玩个钱的，那个山上那的，就是找你接下那个听过的，这地方的怪当车，这里哪里话地方运气没办，这男的就把场没办，运气没办，我来说，这送个当车，这里先准备起来，这里马上把早晚永远没办。 这么的呢，那当各种节的，他当送着节，当出着节，罗杰森的上海唐城，而且上海唐城什么样的，这人都有的， 대자다 갖고 있는 말이지. 얘는 당하는 데는 오마 홍대, 옴대, 산지탕도 꼬는 거, 아들 쏘는 거, 홍대 톡좀 먹어나. 여러 좀 들더니 산지 탐지에 고성톡 참여를 해. 제들이 인가로서 또랑 탐지를 까네. 올해 아보쇼 그랬어. 이 때와는 이게 때와는 매 루면으로 매 지금 상못하나 대 이제 계속 보여. 공부하래 때는 매대 대 상못하는 꼭 아직도 온데지 아 이제 롱지 보고는 롱지 때문에 매지 들 때문에 매지 롱지 탐송도 아 때문에 다다래 그냥 홍지 색공데 이게 몇살다고 말해. 옹 종업제 막는 족바 온 내바 아 용화 홍지 설용화 홍수음지 그렇게 tun직종을 들 tun용종 변화 닦아맞지 까봐 제가 하잖아 옴지 하면 아지 대화를 좀 홍지 색감대 롱수 루루 정보래 대화를 좀 가면 오롱 샤지가 롱도 야대 같은 오롱이 카담 행지는 카담 그래 샤람처럼 카담 그때는 막 애들 롱도 빠지면서 그때 저쪽 세가서는 양은 되게 된 돌차기 되네 오람 탐지를 내가 가르치는 홍지 그때 제 주제로 몸종을 라든 공항처럼 근데 내가 제내한다 갈아사나한다 개차시에한다 센터들이 공항도 많이 봐 저기 차트에 좀 막을 답적이 되겠더니 말랑머리 공항도 주인으로 와 제 로카시 공부래 둘이야 보는 나와 있어서 그 콘트리지 좀 내가 로직 이상 공부들이 이만 공항 제안을 하고 그러라 하고 소나 뭐야 막고는 죄아 근데 야 몰라면 아니 시선을 듣기다는 그거라
So we have been introduced on how we are liberated after our death into the Dharmakaya. There are generally 3 stages of liberation. First, we need to apprehend, if one apprehends the deep sleep state, then without any doubt one will find enlightenment in the first Bardo, in the Dharmakaya. If one is not able to apprehend the deep sleep state, then one can train through the Vajra recitation of Om Ahum or the visualization of the deities and their mantra recitation and gain awareness through these practices. So there are those methods. Ideally, one recognizes the innate nature of mind. One merges one's mindful awareness with any concepts that arise, and one doesn't let other concepts intervene in one's mindful awareness. That is in the ideal case. And secondly, one can meditate on the Yidam deity. And thirdly, one thinks about one's Lama, one contemplates love and compassion and arouses other virtuous concepts. Especially, for example, if one habituates love and compassion, then at night when one is sleeping and one has a dream of sentient beings such as animals or ill people suffering, then when the wish arises to benefit them with a loving and compassionate mind, then this is the best sign of having habituated love and compassion. And after that, I said to Rinpoche that there was a request to further explain the Vajra recitation of Om Ahum. And Rinpoche said, to most of my older senior students, I have already instructed the Vajra recitation of Om Ahum. And generally in the secret mantra, when one receives an empowerment, one also receives a samaya. The physical samaya is to not let one's mind be separated from the clear appearance, the clear visualization of the deity, to not forget the visualization of the deity. The verbal samaya would be to recite the mantra continuously, and the mental samaya would be to never let one's mindful awareness become distracted. So these are called the three vajras, and it is indeed difficult to accomplish those three vajras. Therefore, there is a special instruction, the Om Ahum Vajra recitation. Om signifies the essence of the Buddha's body. Ah represents the essence of the Buddha's speech, and Hum represents the essence of the Buddha's mind. In this way, the three Buddha Kayas or embodiments are contained within the Om Ahum. And this is a practice that we can do throughout all our activities throughout the day. One should begin a formal morning session, and for that one visualizes that at one's navel is a flame like a battle lamp. This was taught by Lord Jigten Sungren. As one breathes in, one thinks Om. With Ah, one holds the breath at the navel, and this breath, this energy melts into the fire at the navel chakra. Then with Hum, you breathe out. This is nothing that should be actually said, but it is the air that is in the nature of Om Ahum. So for example, one round of Om Ahum would maybe take you half a minute. You breathe in, for a few moments you retain the air with Ah, and then you breathe out with Hum. When you retain the air, retain it gently, and also pull some of the lower wind energies up and contract your anus slightly. Practice in a session for about half an hour. And then after you complete your session, also during all your daily activities, your work and so forth, you can always practice the breathing of Om Ahum continuously, whether you are working or eating or speaking to somebody. If you would never forget the Om Ahum recitation, then that would encompass the speech samaya. If one trains well, then gradually or eventually one will be able to recall the Om Ahum even during one's dream state. Of course, one has to train for some time, maybe for a year. If one possesses great diligence, then maybe it will be possible after 2 or 3 months. Ordinarily, it may take a year, but eventually it will become second nature.
Bardo Tambuni, Seven Nelok Shipati, Seven Nelok Shipati, Seven Nelok Shina, Tata, Saki Dokin, Nito Shilita Chicken, Seven Nelok Rang Sarati, or Divan a couple Moshito days of Creole, Ding on a date of that, Ding on Nambo and Yumo Kang Shana, Chishiti, Shukchiboruna. Namboda Nimoga, Tomeva Charlie Bena. Jishiti Meta and Napodi, Pashenta, Sanamta, Numbura, who made the Numda, Latam made the cherry, get in a Chardo Yore. The Tatan was Jishi Zim, Topatam Children, Tau Jishiti, so washing your money. Jishi carrying some Jishi saw more she, Jelichi, Machi the father. 하정 뛰어와시고 대파시고 세분의 룩도 라마 대지나 그래요 뒤신 예담도 라디나 그래요 다 홍지나 되게 가르지나 지시들 매직이나 지시 코는 뭐든 고야 요 말이 빼나 싹동 나왔다고래 지시 몸이 지게 고 나왔다고는 고야 요 말이 제때는 지시 진되는 것도 라마는 몇 통이 오 라마 지시게도 왜 라마 팅게도 대면은 여담 때 왔지 뭐 여담 거들 남자 진되나 제기 오지 진피지 지시코랑 차대요 지시코랑 것들이 라마들이 당 강기나 라마들 여기서 왔다면 지시가 지시가 뒤통수에 제주 지시도 못 봐지 저거도 좀 사진이가 라마 뒤바 예미지 무슨 짬보고 도박하는 아주 시키고 또 짬도 막 가지고는 세고도 something 짬도 막 주서 가만히 상기를 가려야 사실 지시래 지시 가려야 되나 니 짬도 막 쉬어 니몇 동물하지 다른 말로 시당하나 지시 왜 짬도 막 쉬어 왜 말을 도와줘 하는 말 시당 때 저거 말이야 왜 차도 치는 저거 말이야 왜 차도 치는 거 시비시바 때래 땡기니 상계 때래 좀잘 지시 코랑 게 다다 영어보다 나도 좀 탑선지 근데 지소를 지시 코랑 띄고 자 지시 코랑은 내로 그쪽 때나 근데 지시 코랑 싹 동나 파다 같은 가사 비면 통고요 된 통화들이 대충 맞지 시티를 근데 통고요 내 당국가를 지시 공원 통을 대충 지를 지시 공원 마시는더니 지시 시제를 말해 지시 통고 말해 지체 발로라 제발로 말이 하고서 말씀도 자서 라마 되죠 여담 되죠 대표에 싸우는 게 기점고
So in the first part of state, when we recognize the nature of our mind, for those who can recognize the nature of the mind, those practitioners who are able to sustain the view of Mahamudra or Dzogchen, and those who are able to abide within self-cognizing intrinsic awareness, who are able to remain within that state, whatever concepts or afflictive emotions appear to them, if their mindful awareness is strong, then those concepts and afflictive emotions will be rendered powerless. Mindful awareness is like fire, and the afflictive emotions and concepts are like the fuel or oil that is poured into the fire. When you pour that oil into the fire, that makes the fire even greater, even more powerful. If, on the other hand, one does not recognize one's own awareness, mindful awareness, and many doubts may arise in one's mind, and one may question, what is this mindful awareness? Until one has gained conviction in one's mindful awareness, confidence and recognition, one needs to apply methods to come to that state of recognition, such as thinking about one's lama that one has strong love and devotion for example, or one's yidam deity that one feels very close to, or one can also rely upon the practice of the Om Ahum breathing. If one then recognizes mindful awareness, then there is nothing that is to be seen. It is a union of clarity and emptiness that abides like the expanse of space. So in order to apprehend one's own mindful awareness, one can think about recall the Guru, think with strong love about the hidden deity, let its form appear to one's mind. And any time when one does that, then mindful awareness arises in that moment. That is the essence of mindful awareness. When one, in the Mahamudra or Dzogchen practices, it is said that the Lama and one's awareness, one's mindfulness are inseparable. Therefore, it is of great benefit to recall the Lama and the Lama's awareness. When we have received the refuge vow, before we have received the refuge vow, we go for refuge in the 3 outer jewels. And after we have received the refuge vow, what is the inner jewel? The inner Buddha is our mindful awareness. After I have then received the refuge vow, I would think, oh, I have received the refuge vow, I cannot get angry. It is not appropriate to begin quarreling and fighting. I must not get angry or jealous because I have received the refuge vow. That is the real Buddha. That awareness is the real Buddha. And if one maintains this awareness, then gradually it will become stable and firm. Then when one gains insight, when one directly looks at this mindful awareness, at the nature of this mindful awareness, one will see it is a clarity, a union of clarity and emptiness, and it cannot be seen. It is beyond expression, beyond description, and beyond conception. At that point one has no doubts in one's mind and confidence has arisen, and then one is able to remain within that state. But for beginning practitioners, there are many doubts due to non-recognition of the nature of mindful awareness, not having confidence and belief in it. It is nothing that can be seen. It is therefore a good method to recall the Lama, for example, or one's Yidam deity.
So, top job, about the Sanjay, or Tane to the Sanchok to go, Matop, Sanchok to go and change a part, or 당연히 control서 사적 센터 잡혀서래 해서 지난이 탁탁 때문에 상계를 해서 아 상계를 관리 잡고도 다 계시니까 상상 다 다른 하고요 그러나 다다 조장도 와서는 좀 지시해 다좀 지시나 지시들 관리 잡고도 그러나 지시들 사제는 다다한테 남도 용 거를 맞춰서 저게 다다다 고치잖아. 이거 뭐 하면은 사제에 막 탐지가 좀 가세지. 해해요. 참마게 이거보다 보통 사제에 막 참에 망을 참에 나고요. 하고 요지 가서 길을 나거리. 나 이거 다 쓰면더니 상제지 뭐 하고 요지 해지로. 이거는 다른 탑대 딱고도 빼 가버려야지 야야로. 다른 탑대 빼 가버려야지. 동문에는 가보요 말에 사제지는 짧지 매송을 가리리 소소 생각도 생각 때나 네 뉴모가 렌데 해당을 데 기와렌데 뭐 기와데 심기 희바 데 미기 쩍다로 말로 뭐지나 우리 데 오늘 디 희바 되게 주도 희바한테 사제래야 야 이 시바텔 때는 저렇게 해당 해보지 있잖아. 해당하는데 쭈너리 해당 코랑 쭈너리 해서 베르고 라는 정신이라 좀 강양 뭐지 해당 코 야서나 깔마 쫑아니래 되게 말아. 양나로 그래. 양계 그래. 양나로 대라로 되시니 택대라 손이 해당 공부하면 뭐 되게 시기 그래. 이런 거 봐. 당연히 양자랑 갖고 말해. 제르디니 공부를 접게 했으니 왜나 코와지 자와 남도레스 올레 코와 장메 봐야는 왜나 저를 짜다 전부 저생만 못 지요래 되는 짜직지네 적대는 짜지 코도반이래서 짜지 코도반이래서 되는 남도 깨문제는 도반이 뭐 하고도 있잖아 남도가 뉴뭐 보고 깨지게 또 코와도 도반이 되리 하고 그랬지 코가도 철지는 남도리 남도 짱을 좀 하고 잘해서 대다고 주지 냥들은 미리 하고 그래 변아 어떤 냥들 링 턱가 턱도 진짜 되는데 냥들 링부터 진짜 강에 막못 잡고요 그래 르자 장진 탐지 배사도 도고도 다 르자 남파는 거 도고요 공도 르자 거쳐자 도고요 야 촉장 톡을 보내자 톡을 가디 강해자 보내 나도가 망고를 잘 장미로 와 대통령 내로 가래래 대게다 치고들래 나버는데 보내자 비 자치고래서 배샤 망고도 톱잖아 자 사는 띠띠가 너무 말한대요 때는 새벽까지도 깽해요 말도 딱히 나또 누구 띡 문제는 다 산이 제시니 상상니 고마라 사제 심지니 상상 은혜를 내주다 사제가 잡대 제시가 잡고 요요 대주 제시 되려면 이쪽도 대상기에 좀 변은 제시 코랑 사제면은 어래 들리더니 그밖에 좀 채로 와 어래 들리 싸움도 들리 내라오래서 무슨 양소나 쭈르지 갖다 쭈르기나 다 쭈르지 제시들 공부를 이거는 보고 뭐 시성한테 내라오 뭐 실래 내라오를 공주 이거는 보라
The ultimate and infallible source of refuge is the Buddha, in whom we take refuge from this day onwards until we attain the heart of enlightenment. When we take refuge in the three jewels. From within the three jewels, the ultimate source of refuge is the Buddha. And how does we receive protection from the Buddha? When we come to the juncture of birth and or of life and death, then it is our mindful awareness which provides protection. And how does that happen? This is something that we can experience at all times. Many people may think, they say, well, if I have rid myself of all the afflictive emotions, then one is a Buddha. But it is very difficult to apply the method to bring that about. Actually, it is not that difficult. As the Buddha has said, the method is not to be sought elsewhere. Mind has to look at mind itself. The one that recognizes, that awareness that recognizes, oh, this is afflictive emotion arising, this is anger, this is a virtue thought, this is an unvirtue thought. The one who knows all this, that is the Buddha. For example, if strong anger arises, then immediately when one thinks, oh, this is wrong, strong anger has arisen, then this itself is the Buddha. It is mindful awareness holding its own seat. Then if mindful awareness holds its own seat and one just rests in mind's natural state, not even in 15 minutes the anger will disappear, and it may come back again, and again it will disappear. And in this way one is training again and again. If one has recognized one concept of anger, for example, to be empty in self-nature, then one has recognized all concepts to be empty in self-nature. In this sense, the method actually is not that difficult. Lord Nagarjuna has said the root of samsara actually lies within conceptuality. Although samsara is infinite, it has one single root. It is made by our own concepts. For example, on the mountain, if there's many different grasses and bushes, if one realizes the nature of one single grass, one has realized the nature of all of them, the little pieces of like little grass and bushes. And if one has recognized one concept to be empty of self-nature, then one has realized that all the 84,000 different afflictive emotions and concepts in samsara are empty in self-nature. Samsara's nature is emptiness. And this is something that you can experience as you engage in practice. One needs to train and engage in practice. For example, many people train their bodies and they do all sorts of exercise, like playing like a basketball, some ball game, and they work very hard and they endure many hardships, and for which result maybe to get famous or to get a lot of money, but in the long run there will be not much result. So if you look at your mind and you recognize one single concept, then you have recognized the nature of all other concepts. Then when you come to the juncture of being alive and death, then it is this mindful awareness which will provide protection. Mindful awareness is the Buddha. It is the one who interrupts the stream of confusion. And this is something that anybody can practice and experience. One only needs to apply diligence, perseverance in one's meditation practice. The recognition is considerably easy. The habituation of this state only takes a longer time.
Tiri Bardo Tamuri Sangjila, oh, Bardo Chukani Sangjila, Namkala Namka Tamala, Kangamiwa Chakari, Chakayo Mari, Ore. Tada Chupi Jasala, Chupi Jasa Sensona, Chupi Jasa Sensona, Teva Teletini, Chimbala Tevaletini, Loco the Trucker Rangi, in the matter of the church. Chang me Panjori, Chang me ba. Rangi, Bepa the Toval Matipa, Yogi Tata, Check to correct the check to come married, and there in the Mare, your Mari, Tokashibati, Sula San Chooks and some hinges, San Chooks and Julia, tell San Chooks and Tokasi, Jerry or Gale. There's in a better maybe wanted to buy over your head. Yeah, I took on a son, Jim Matabla Kare, I'm going to check me, Semata. Ni Coxon. Tanga Mari, Tanga give your chego your ass, or to give it over. Nampo Pachu, telling you to watch your oh, not Ni Coxon. You got the Takari, Yadam not in it. Sunny Shokan, Tam me, my shadow at them, my carchaja. Ya, not I shut out, so Ni Sepana, you really. Didn't now have enough of the Jetsana. Didn't drop it, can't drop your Drum you were taught that you have the Sabu, Ya, I give the Roma Tringo, Lama Tringo, Jelam Tringo, and three penny Jelam, Yam the Tetu to walk up, and you have a silent general. Oh, they didn't take a while, David to J. the Bucket, Slatation Canna, or go to Coyore. Tell them, Rap, Pardo, local Sankia, Pardo Ivani. Pardo Subani, Parkari, Yadanga Lion, Tempo, dream of dreams of Mato. The lead up turn so Yella Chapada Shibatella, so one Mato, the new Mambo China, now in your body. Chill over that took you. Dropped on top of Dr. Urge, I give on his call to your repena. You are his call to the Tatcher Kiwati. Tara Sanchok simply, Teta Chinchilla, I want to tell you. They don't want Teta, you're in some time around me, but sometimes around your Wayona. There is Sanchok simply, Jane. Tanga, she said, Tanga, Kiwaledo, Kiwa Langa Kangli. Ranga Devala Matuba, that's simply Tamki, you found it, all simply Tamki, the Pimba, the David John Joel, some Sanchok simply that they might know. Three young round at the top of the Dandy Chunga Grow. They're a thing with me. That's a jar in your head. But also but to cause it.
So when one attains enlightenment in the first Bardo, in the Dharmakaya, then some may think, it is then like space dissolving in space and then nothing is left. This is not the case. Once one has taken the royal seat of the Dharmakaya, depending on the strong love, naturally and free from any effort, Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya emanations will appear, like the rays of the sun naturally appear. An infinite amount of Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya emanations will appear, free from any effort and naturally. And one cannot say, oh, this is a true Nirmanakaya and this is not. Whoever possesses bodhicitta can said to be a Nirmanakaya. So free from any effort, those Nirmanakaya emanations appear. If one has not attained enlightenment into the Dharmakaya in the first Bardo, then it is like waking up from a sleep and thinking, oh, I slept, I must practice virtue. So one's mindful awareness is intervened by a concept of virtue, a virtuous concept. That will lead to enlightenment in the second Bardo, in the Sambhogakaya, through remembering the hidden deity, for example. When one has died, then one awakens again and one thinks, I have died. It is like awakening from a sleep. But the thought of I has arisen, I have died, and this thought of I obscures the nature of one's mind. But then one immediately can recall the hidden deity, such as Tara, or one can recall the Lama. One can have a clear appearance of the generation stage practice, and one's mind will become the deity. Then, through the compassionate power of the deity, the pure lens of the deity will become manifest. This is the enlightenment into the Sambhogakaya in the second stage. If one has not cultivated a firm and stable hidden deity practice, then one comes to the third chance to attain enlightenment into the Nirmanakaya. Then concepts of attachment, craving, other afflictive emotions arise, and the thought of I becomes stronger and further increases the obscuration of the mind's nature. But if one has cultivated some bodhicitta, one has attained some independence, and one recalls bodhicitta, then although one has to take a rebirth again, one takes rebirth as in Nirmanakaya. Also, when one has attained some mindful, like some stability in mindful awareness, like we, for example, sometimes we do have stable mindful awareness, sometimes we don't. So when we have a somewhat stable mindful awareness and we can recall bodhicitta, and we think, now I have died, I will have to take another rebirth, may it be for the benefit of all sentient beings, may it become the cause of all benefit and happiness of all sentient beings. Then one has some little independence, for one's self-clinging has somewhat decreased. Then one will take another rebirth, and that is called the third stage of the Nirmanakaya.
This is Jerem. Jerem that Jesse John, Jerem song. The church Yali Tang, Della Jell, Jerem, some Jell song. Was a church Yali Tang. Jali, the Jerem, the Jesse John, Jerem, Chelok, the John, Jordan song. All that is Chevrolet, such a one of the some Lavua. Take Jordan of the railway. Then it's just Jordan that Jordan to begin Lavua. Jerem Virginia. Then I thought Jerem that Jesse John, Mother Jali, Tangla, Janet, such a song. Then Jerem Naba, yeah, Jerry, Harley. Jerem Naba, the Jenny Jesso, Tata, Naji, Gongji, Rocherji, Juji, yeah. Rochelle, Jibati Ramji, which you are in Lora. Pena Tata, also simply a strong child of Porta, the last of the church Salina and Trade on Ramji, silent strong child dominant on Lora. Rocherji, Pena also be looking at the Tama Majilla, really young, simple to Lora. The last of all, that time the Rocherji is Rocherji. She American, your money. American, she got away. That's how I say. Who does want to see whatever? 딱걸 출마 좀 나리 저거한테 부셔 지서 대진에 이제서 들이 다 지와니 받을 토마토니 마셔도 나봐 진도 받지와 대신 이 상속 생산 되려야 되는 마트에 그걸 때렸더니 근데 바도니 맹제도 보고지 바도 유리체라 족 다다면이 남기요 말이야 직제가 족 매나야 동이 이제 빠졌잖아요 족 매봐라 초와 두시 두지 남시 지제다 요래 족 다다면이 요 말에 속된 교황도 오래 오래 다다 같이 라다다 다들 리드 나와 좀 요래 그래야 다다 같이 송진이 껴서만 루칸데 이거 뒤 나와 잡고 요래 이때 나와 잡다 다담을 막고 쏘고와 너게도 보고서
Then it is said that when the way we take rebirth is likened to the generation stage, and the way we die is likened to the completion stage, when one dissolves into the other. In terms of taking rebirth, there are 4 different types of taking of rebirth. Taking rebirth in a womb, in an egg, through heat, and miraculous rebirth. For example, taking rebirth through heat and moisture. For example, little animals, they naturally, instantaneously are born. For example, when we don't clean our body very well and we sweat a lot and we don't wash, then we will be infested by like human lice. They naturally just appear due to the heat and moisture of our body. But in any case, when it comes to taking a rebirth, although the thought of I has arisen again in the Bardo state, when one merges it with bodhicitta, one still can attain a favorite incarnation. In the Bardo state, we do not have the 5 aggregates, but we have it is called the aggregates of the 4 names. Although we don't have a body anymore, the suffering that we experience is one and the same as though we had a body. We still have the other 4 aggregates of sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. Although there is no body, there is sort of a appearance of a body. The first few weeks of the Bardo state, we have the perception of our old body that we left behind, and the last few weeks of the Bardo state, we have the perception of the next body that we are about to take on in our next incarnation.
와르도 내 제작자를 제다 샤연구요 대탐제도 다란게 랍장치는 무슨 바체를 빼나 빼는 야와라 제외 따라 로바 신 탐지 매체 공사더니 로바 매체 공사더 이게 나와 샤로나 야와라 제외 따인소 그리고 포과동다 그리고 신동 말이 바도如果如把替代一下擦的，讲嘛是罗德的，俺就下擦了把东西回来，他把东西弄了，看不出来。讲下面来，把这给他这个了，什么把东西弄了是吧？好嘞，你要完了东东的，如果没有吃从身上嘛，这里来从你要完了就打了，这里铺吧东吧。나는 정상기 들이 폭파 제가 저거는 폭파다 동바 로마 매체 소한테 잡이다 이 야와가 아래 야와가 지고 따라 저는 다른 무슨 신이 라고 도고 도모 파마테라서 뭐 신차치라 들이 대탐지 깨자는들이 나더라 요 이제 다들이 아, 예담도 따와 진 속도 요 말이 실신차 대삼지 진나. 대 차단다고 되니 대삼지 깨자. 대도 깨 운이 되는 기들이 마잖아 요지. 이 까비들이 같이 잡고 롱 잡고 되라도 인정한 기고 요래. 라왕미 발레가 놓고 코르기. 지우고 쪽 놓고 코르가 잡고 놓고 치와나 이게서 라왕미 봐. 자고 롱는 그도가 잡고 놓고 치와나 이들이 요래서 라왕미 봤다. 얘네들이 정상 차바다 보는 들이 세와 들이 롱만 아무나 다 때라서 봤더니 강도 땅 거가 들이 롱발로 빼지 도와 측도 도는 측도 봐는데 나 섭제되나 예다가 다에 소지다 지다에서
내가 보셔도 나들 여기서 다들 가봐 되게 그래서 이게 거기로 그때 가르게 다게
이 도보가 되냐와 호박 동바 저처럼 와도 호박 동바 남미 도보도 뭐더라고 저런데나 소데 내가 주노가 차가잖아 대사만이 또 강남배가 주노구나 내가 나왕배 같이 가사 trou고요 어디 면에서 가도들이 대사라나 trou고요 되게 나왔잖아 드리지간에 도보 보고 깨자고한테 냐발을 지금 다 해서 참아를 동부 근데 예다를 지었다라 로바 드라이브 도와 매치 도와 죽는 가야만 소화돼 예다를 지었다 제가 지었다라더니 뭐 타는 쪽으로 변해 깡관 나와서 뭐 나와 샤고 냐발지나 다 구독 가지고는 뭐도 타는 쪽들이 깡관 나와 되나 샤비 로가라 냐발 지었다 해서
나랑 계속 보대.
나도 좀 보대. 나 지금 가서 뭐 뭐죠? 뭐가 가만나지 뭐죠? 아직 가야 참고해 보더니 나와 시작해서 내가 보고 저도 촬영 그러니까 차와자로 나 영영 참아 요래다. 네. 차와자니 이 아마리 이야기를 이 가공소 그만자 소동으로 소 가서 소동을 차와자들이 왜 까바나지 뭐에 탄거도 어떻게 다나 내고 마동자 아마나 고야 토보지로들 다창 들이 도둑게 돼도 다창 나와리 저 샤링을 이제 아마 들으라고 봐. 나와들이 샤도 된다. 뭐 탄거지 깜바는 뭐야 들이 차들이 지금 나왔어. 마셔 공원 차. 들이 슬라다 플라미 들을 지나 들이 냐나기양 뭐 틀라고 하지. 냐나기도 틀라 가서 틀라도 오는 나왔잖아. 플라미를 지어야 인스. 플라미를 지어다 아래에서 들이 할 때다 랭이바 마보마사바 마자그란 비는 슬라이를 지는 들이 족직 나와라게 저거 보드 들이 문에지 뭐지 깜빡깜빡지는 거리 나와 착수해서
지금 나와서
저거 들이 슬라마까지 지는 데도 저거 매명지 깜빡살로 보여요. 제가 슬라가 매일 지나 다지지서 저 박차라 이제 봐도 좀 나서봐 사이어서 매일 지어라 어떻게 다 망고 요리다 좋다 진짜 바디 뒤로 치면은 요리 고수 많아 네 수자로 고치고 저저 되나 야고 따지 수자로 고치고 바도 저저로 봐 바디 때문에 참아 요리 돼 제가 때네 다다 성장체를 빼야 보여야지 하고서 어야 내가 용용 제거를 이 요래들 락탄들이 이 마보라면 필요가 없는 거야. me sata many particular parapilla. Chita, your gavotilla, your gavoto, now I shall also go. Chima, the Lopachipo, rolling now I shall go. Milatan, no touching or the Pama was a challenge at the child. Mila, make you. There's that here, so.
Did you get him somewhere? Did you get him somewhere?
Really?
Yeah. So if one has not completely purified all one's affective emotions, then depending on whatever affective emotion is predominant, one will take rebirth in any of the 6 realms of samsara. For example, as one is wandering in the Bardo state, and as a sign of being reborn in the hell realms, certain appearances will arise, such as being in a like an area, a country with blazing fire, burning, is a sign of being reborn in the hell realms, or coming close to an empty cave and hearing the sounds of those that one has a strong attachment to, like one's friends or one's parents, those one had a strong attachment to, and one hears them crying out saying, I am here. Again, one will not be able to remember the hidden deity, and one will give rise to concepts of attachment and will go to that place. That is a sign of being reborn in the hell realms. Another sign, or generally when one is wandering through the Bardo state, one, without any choice or independence, is drawn, depending on one's karma, into a certain direction. It is like one's consciousness is like a feather of a bird being carried away by the winds of one's karma, floating back and forward. One experiences great fear, terrifying appearances arise before one. There is rain, hail, darkness. One is naked. When one then hears one's close ones crying, come here, I am here, and one goes there, one will be reborn in the hell of the Shalmali tree. As a sign of being, another sign of being reborn in the hell realms is that one's body appears to be upside down, one's head's down and one's legs sticking up. Rinpoche says, I have experience with that actually. And he says, believe me, I have experience with everything. So one time I was a young child, I had a fever and I was thirsty, so I stole some yogurt from my mother and drank it. Then I had the appearance, it appeared to me as though my head would be down and my legs would be sticking up, as though I would be upside down. And I was crying to my mother and I said, I'm upside down. And my mother said, you must be close to death, I'm sitting completely straight. But this was not the experience that I had. So this is a sign of hell realms. A sign of being reborn in the realms of the hungry spirits is if one comes to a country with a lot of smoke and one cannot see anything. A sign of being reborn in the realm of the jealous gods is that one is moving forward, like straight forward, like a fish moving forward. If one has not accumulated too many non-virtuous actions and one has some virtuous propensities such as generosity or moral ethics, but one still possesses a good deal of pride, then one will be reborn in the God realm. And a sign of that is that one appears in a white colored country and one is walking straight up just like a human being. Also a sign of being reborn as a human being is quite similar. One also proceeds through a white colored country. But being reborn as a human being, one has attachment and one then sees one's future parents in union and cultivates attachment and thus is reborn as a human being. There are many different other signs of the different rebirths, and there is a book on the Bardo that is translated into English by Rinpoche, and it would be very advisable if you could study this very well.
되게 강연을 다 망고 요리 다 강연을 다 답을 가르쳐 거예요. 이제는 진시 되게 싫어 문제 다다 송제 무서도 공적보다 나보다 유모모 왕들 마셔나 제대로 나왕 요리를 빨라왕 톱도 대탐치 출발하는 게 뭐남나기 또도 그 요리 올해 저랑티 알레 예담티 다와티 라마티 대탐치 제인도 다다 나왕 톱고 그래 다다 유모모 나왕 톱 바도 나왕 톱고 요리 다다 나왕만 톱다 들이 바도는 나왕 톱고 요 말이 제디 유모모죠 대샤용 요리 센데 유모모 왕도 쇼트네 유모모라는 카도를 도와도 샤용 요리 대다로 상로다는 들이다다 남장 좀도 제도 공자도 요거요라 남들도 요거라
So generally there are many different signs of the different realms that we can be reborn in. But in any case, what that is inspiring us is to engage in the practice of mindful awareness for as long as we are alive. When through our practice we do not fall under the power of afflictive emotions and concepts arising, we will gain independence of awareness. Then we will be able to recognize and realize all those to be a confusion, like a dream. When one is able then to remember the hidden deity, or one is able to place one's mind within the view or recall the Lama, then at this point one can gain already independence. If one has attained independence of awareness at this point, then one will be able to have independence in the Bardo state. If one doesn't have any independence now, one will not have any independence in the Bardo state. The self-life of the afflictive emotions naturally will make the 6 realms appear to you. Like each of the afflictive emotions, color will become manifest in the form of the 6 realms of samsara. Hearing this should inspire one and give rise to the wish to engage in practice.
The Muzang Napkison, Jerem Jepata, Holo de Po, Jerem de Kadamba, Geluk Padang, Kadam Jerem Jepata, Muzang Napkison, Ramanga, Jerem Gonguyore. There the Kari Gonguyore in the Tangni, Tini, Sanchok Sente, Tayo, Tini Rangayam, Rawan Top Matapatena, the Sanchok Sem Bojetelati, Tarangi Jiva. Deva Pamati, Sem Shayo, Pamaja, Joy, Yelly Charwo, Lamsang, the Pamaja, Holo de Po Yavanis, Yaman Lama Yavini, some Chikobi, Lama Yavin, King or H. Three Margaret, Kazan, Trilika Martina, Yamata Davati, Tenya Tong, oh, Yamata Davati, Tony, the Kiji Irangi, in Yamata Dalcom. Tene Dipana, Ranga Namshi, Rawan, we were going to chop out the international Shopakami, chop out my Eva. Simply Tamji, and the paper on the Masajok to make your law, so, Sajok simply that they were telling Malachona. Tene Sajok to make your island, you were a fellow. The other children Tamji, Tambo, Jaya Kangon, Trinity, Yamata, David, Gongo. Yamata Davati didn't let any that Sound Gompiore, Ole. Sound the Tamus of the Poor Namshija Ore, Nabachi Bible from the Sound Journal. Did the Gabriela they are teaching somewhere over, teaching them to be checked. Then Pamaga Kankamania Tom, Latan, Yamata Davati, that only the Nijin you don't dream back. Any longer not to home something. Papa, Jeremy Pomala, home your quantity that teacher for your Cadena. 여기 홍련전들이 밤을 날에 쇼송잖아. 저리 진실이 큰을 오고요. 산속선 나만이지. 밤이 벌어 이게 차고 막는 거고요. 말이야. 들레들 사오는 삼층 때 어제 또는 산지 탑재 살아 뒤 삼지 탑재도 반장들이 고민하는 게 장례들이 다 가래 밤하고 보고 그런 날 보고 차들이 보고 그래서 류용서도 봤더니 류용서도 봤더니 말이 많다 지용으로 봐. 다 지원이 놓게 돼. 그래서 용어는 지름.
So regarding the way we take rebirth, just like in the generation stage practice, is explained in 5 steps or the 5 actual enlightenments, 5 stages of the generation stage or way we take rebirth. If one has cultivated some bodhicitta and has cultivated or attained some mental independence, then in the Bardo state, when the appearance of one's future parents will become manifest to one, then immediately, instead of falling into this way of craving, one would visualize the hidden deity, such as Chakrasambhara or the Lama Yapyom in consort appearance. Then immediately, as one remembers that, when then the white and the red drops of the parents meet together, one will understand those drops to be in the essential nature of emptiness and compassion, and one would visualize its pure form being a sun and a moon disk. So then one visualizes the sun and the moon disk. Then with this independence, one enters the womb of the parents with the aspiration that as I'm entering this womb, may this incarnation be for the benefit of all sentient beings, and may I cultivate bodhicitta for all beings. Then one will take an incarnation as a bodhisattva. So first, in the generation stage practice, there is the celestial palace. Secondly, there is the visualization of the sun and the moon. Thirdly, on top of that, we visualize the seed syllable of the deity, which represents our own consciousness, which we visualize also in order to maintain mindful awareness. So when the white and the red drops of our parents merge, if we immediately remember the sun and the moon seeds, and our consciousness meditates on the syllable home, for example, then that is then we will carry this mindful awareness within the womb. This is a very important point of the generation stage practice. Then we will carry the twofold bodhicitta with us, and we will not fall under the power of heedlessness. Then from the womb syllable, the deity becomes manifest with all its hand implements through the light emanating from the seed syllable, which is then the manifestation of the actual Buddha or deity. This is then the stage where we have taken the womb of the parent, and then we have actually established a body. A body has grown in the womb. So this is the way we take rebirth, explained through the generation stage yoga.
Tene teta komba chebo bela ya rang te pa da sa chok sem bo che teta ju la una e de chuni pa do de ni ta so de ni ni chen ha la ta da cha ri da cha ga zhe ge yo le ta de yu de dang ge le ni ta chuni pa do chong chi ku sa sang chi cha ge yo le chuni pa do ni pa lo ba pa do da bo cha 등차 등이라고 이 계단 도코도가 미치스면 뽑아가 등차 등이나
아니 시바 파르르
얘라 주니발도가 때문에 아무라 시바라 토타기 차 다다 시바라 담비는 안게 주라 변나 어레 홍콩 후보 감 호감 김치가 나기가 접대요래 대답지 new Mopade, Madame Cabra, new Mopade, there are water child. Tapacabra, the flying body, if you got the days of Santok on the theatre of the flash out of the Jawaranga, three Shavasha, three Tosha, three the head of the store adoption. Purchase of which a hard port of a dama, 3 months of Guri. Shavata Provisha, which you Bardo also. The Chini Bardo to the 12 months of Tata to the Sabapart of the Sabapart on the Malan Chamburi. Sabapart on Chamata, Kiwadi to the Dama, take over the Pena. Tata Jessic Young Jeremy. Oh, 3 days Dama, Kanya make it Bella Tamarbata. The Giva Lapsibo, Mother, Giva Lapsibo, drop Matabata, Kazadi, Tati of the Pardo theatre. You the boy, Chabiori. Benedictine, Denny, Soto, Sete, Madone. 2 money per choir. You are right. 2 money per choir, just only Sete, Madon, Pardo de or Richina. The Pardo there, Tata Theatre. I jumpa the Sancho and Theatre owner, Martoni, Tatana, Kali Meva, or Dota, Neta, Lonjuta, Elaso Patachi, Kali Meva, or Tricha, there he only. Trita Shidanki comes with that, they didn't Latam, Yava and how I shadow worry. Tatapin, Seva, I would let you know. Gandusona, Tama, Tobola, Chadi or what the Padoli tea, Seva is good, they don't want to put some so it was when you can come in the Tewake, Sertan, Tomateras, Moki, get out of Koyorva. The game to everything in the Padority, it's a Devate Shadow. Koto, near Tokoyority, but you have to find a Padorita, the Rangita, Mambo Noyorva, Shetanga Tadority, it's around your money. So it means also around maybe Joanna. The store Rawang top my thought. But the one door like a Tishi dam or a Sancho center, Tishi Rawang top my teacher by the or me to put a Tishi. They are they use something like a kind of jet for your feeling. She will not stop by on a kind of Doku Rawang Chipomen. Rawang Chipomen, Rawang Tom Sugar Sanji Mataba. Say local Sanji Mataba. Papa don't Sancho Center control the part of Matana. They are Cocoa, Flash Regina. This is a pop chibor. What I tell you to head. Now, to talk to Shida, thinking your head, Shida, thinking.
So if one has gone on to the Bardo state and one possesses some little devotion and bodhicitta, then as one is wandering in the Bardo of Brahmadato, then the peaceful and wrathful deities will appear to one. So generally Rinpoche says we are wandering in the Bardo for about 7 weeks. So then the peaceful deities will appear to us. The peaceful, like if we are like of more pure karma or have not under the power of afflictive emotions, then naturally those pure appearances of deities and their pure lands will appear to us, such as the 5 Dhyana Buddhas or peaceful or wrathful deities. If we are of impure karma and if we are afflicted by negative emotions, then the 6 realms of samsara will appear to us. But if we have this pure karma and the deities will appear to us and we supplicate the deity, then we can be reborn, or the appearance of the pure lands will become manifest to us, and then we find liberation. If one does not find liberation in this Bardo of Brahmadato, one continues to wander on into the Bardo of becoming. And there one needs the instructions that we have just received of taking a rebirth, the generation stage practice. If one has not received those instructions and one has some virtues and some non-virtues, some deeds that one has committed, then it is very possible that one may wander in this Bardo state for a long period of time. Also, sometimes when one has not lived one's full lifespan, or one has died an untimely death, then it is possible that one may have to stay in this Bardo state until the lifespan would have come to an end. Then if one has cultivated some bodhicitta and generosity, then one will experience little difficulties in that state. One will meet with friends, one will have a pleasant dwelling place, one will have some wealth, one will not experience many difficulties. But on the other hand, if one has given rise to anger, then immediately the perception of hell will become manifest. If one has been a loving person, then wherever one goes, one will meet with harmonious friends. Then even in the Bardo state, one will live in a pleasant dwelling place. Those, for example, are the outcome or the result of actions that we did, such as smoke offerings or the offering of dharmas and so forth. Those root of virtue will then lead to the pleasant appearances of the Bardo state. But if we have continuously given rise to anger or jealousy, then the terrifying appearances of the Bardo will become manifest without any independence. Then, without any choice, we will have to take a rebirth in these three lower realms. If the main instruction is on what it all depends on is whether or not we have gained independence of mind. The main instruction, therefore, is to cultivate bodhicitta and to maintain mindful awareness, to gain independence of the mind. Otherwise, one will be carried around by the winds of karma like the feather of a bird. If one has attained this independence of mindful awareness and bodhicitta, one may gain enlightenment in the Dharmakaya. If one has cultivated devotion into these three jewels, and if one is able to remember the deity, each time one is able to do that, one will receive the blessings of the deity. So these are the instructions on how we take a rebirth again.
Today, Karen Wages of Chessie, Joram, Joram Peki, Cheboyore, Joram Tela, Tony, Chessie, Joma, Ole, Tonga Cheboyore, Cherokte. Tony Bakan, Joram, the United, don't look with Nero, Sagat with Nero, they just don't go. Well, Jordan, you go to Lama Choa to Tana. Part of home, Sajaka, Safety, Napaka, Chojan, Mamboshi Better, Gongu or Better, or not that person comes to Gongu or Take up the Joktani, Koto Tamti, so dinner, Lama or Lama Tamini. I was a dumb children, the Gona, Koto, Jaya, Kansan, Yam Yulatan, Yam Yablatan, Yap took a home with them, then Jordan, they said, go look the carriage, you know. What they get home with the looking, what they get two times, get a manga, who will tattoo, who bought the temper to a tower, leg up the muscle. Several of you, Saga Simple, now, same to target, semi tomber target, Tata Tamar Batam to water. Dazi later you move Darkam G is the Mango to charge your age. Tapa Sanjay Sara? Oh, just of the Sanjay of the Chongwa Jip, they are pretty young, they said. Now the same Saton of Kata, 6-7 year old told her, oh, Sanjay Tapi, there is some with this don't she be. Neck up Mango to charge your Tato, the Sanjay Tapi Sanjay, get a total, they are going by the Ji Shibata. They look to Shiba Rapper. It is simply subject also Chelo Topaya, Ludi Joa Mazatama, Tem the Tem, Doctor Napkin, Napstin the Gombanilla. 납시 동반이 통로가 공격 나다라 나다 차진 조반도 백바 할줄 저러와 뭐 홍지도 나다 참 조보도 접된 나팔바 매발 공부를 납시대 문에지네 요말봐 요보다 대바트바 요말 나오냐 반도바 매일은 그 말 심사 봉송조 사원한테 동바랑지 사와들 무엇도 치마트바 동나 요게 가야 랍토고 말봐 지도 사자지면 내로 돈을 줘 봤지 돈을 그대로 콜데니와 동바니 뭐지 동바다 제가 마도 봤지 내가 다른 철업라 배잖아 내가 좋아 배잖아 좋아 저런지 돈이 과도와 대학은 미적 차이는 매대 루차 참는데 매대 루는 메리드라 무슨 매대 루는 메리드 루말의 셈리 매대 셈을 로래 야 셈까지 될 소지 셈을 적대 셈 따와를 토비하려 말라 나빠다는 매파마에 코드에 그렇게 있지 요파마에 자외다 맞아 요새는 사제가 통로 말했지 매일 코드에가 샤요 요리 우리 따라하지 하고서 어때 예능이 다 다시 댓글을 셔차리 제럼 조름 여 제로 여 셔차리와 하고서
So this for the generation stage, and then as for the completion stage, which is likened to the dissolution at the time of our death, this is a very important point, very essential point. When we engage in the practice of Mahamudra, and when everything dissolves, then this is what is meant with the dissolution stage. For example, if we engage in a ritual practice, we visualize sentient beings, the refuge tree, the guru, and so forth. And in the end of the practice, one dissolves back into the other. First, the celestial palace dissolves into the yab, the yum. The yum dissolves into the yab. Then it dissolves into the lama. And in the end, everything dissolves. That is the dissolution stage. The reason why we engage in the completion stage practice is to understand that all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, although they are so extensive, in actuality they have no inherent existence. They have no reality to them. They are a concept made by the mind. And the mind's nature is empty. Ordinarily, we are overpowered by self-clinging, and there becomes a multitude of self and others. If we purify this state, then we understand that the Buddhas of past, present, and future, although there is a multitude, are essentially one in nature. So when we look at that nature, the nature of mind, it is a union of clarity and emptiness, abiding like the expanse of space. If one looks at that nature, one understands that within that nature the Buddha is contained. So one ultimately realizes the single nature of mind. Although there is a multitude of appearances, essentially it is of one essential single nature. So when one understands this at the time of dying, when one dissolves into the other, it is like the completion stage where one of the visualization dissolves into the next one. Everything has, for example, dissolved into the hum syllable, and then there is the nada on top of the hum syllable. Everything dissolves into this nada, and in the end it becomes very subtle and very fine, and in the end it becomes nothingness, and one remains within a state free from reference. This is likened to the state when at dying our consciousness then dissolves into emptiness. This consciousness has no inherent existence. and yet it cannot said to be non-existing, for it is a union of clarity and emptiness. The nature of clarity is emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is clarity. It can neither said to be existing, nor can it said to be non-existing. When we realize the nature of mind, Mahamudra, we realize that both samsara and nirvana are empty of self-nature. So this is the purpose of the generation stage practice. For example, now we take one single person and we say, this body, this is the person. Very easily we can establish that this body is not the person. Then one could say, oh, then this person is the mind. But if you look at the mind, you can't reach it. It abides like space. And yet it cannot said to be existing, for it has not been seen, not even by the Buddhas. It cannot said to be non-existing, for all of samsara and nirvana appear within this mind. It is the view of the middle way. So this is the instruction of the birth and dying, which is likened to the generation stage and completion stage practices.